Hi, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Nice to see you again. I'm Catherine Mattice, founder and CEO of Civility Partners, and I have an old friend. He's he's coming back for a second time, Steve Van Cohen. And Steve, the last time we met, you were working on a book, and now it's out. And I think my copy is probably sitting in my PO box. I need to go check it. But congrats on the new book.
Thank you. Yeah, last time we talked, it was a work in progress, and now I get to share it with the world, and it feels incredible.
Yeah, so tell us about the book. I'll let you introduce yourself.
The book is the world's first to address workplace loneliness. And as you can imagine, people are feeling extra lonely these days, right? With remote work and technology dominating how we're communicating and the social distancing and all of the crazy stuff we've dealt with for the past 2 years, people around the world are lonelier than ever. So we timed our book pretty nicely. And the book is all about how to reduce loneliness, increase belonging, and make sure that we are as connectable as we can be.
Yeah. Now, were you already working on the book and then COVID happened to hit and you just happened to be like, the timing was everything?
We came across a statistic in 2018 that
Okay.
found 73% of Gen Zers, those under the age of 25, 73% of Gen Zers feel lonely regularly. And that statistic about blew our brains, because to think that the vast majority of an entire generation of human beings is feeling regularly lonely caught us off guard. And we do a lot of work in the generational dynamic space. My partner is a keynote speaker who talks about the future of work and emerging professionals. So we started to research, well, what can companies do? What are we going to recommend as solutions for this really lonely generation? And then COVID hit. So we had all this research about loneliness at work, and we started to come up with some solutions and some ideas. And we took it to clients and said, hey, do you want to talk about this? And every client said, yes, this is amazing. Please come in and let's discuss. And it's just blossomed from there.
Yeah. And I would imagine that younger generation was feeling lonely because they grow up on technology. Is that the basis of that statistic that you came across in 2018?
There are three big reasons why
Okay.
the emerging generation feels most lonely, and they still are the most lonely generation. However, we could all understand why all of us feel a bit more disconnected than we have in years past. So the first is what's called dependency shift.
Okay.
20 years ago, if something broke in my house, I would have to go ask a neighbor or call a friend or, get my dad on the phone. If I wanted a good recommendation on where to go to eat, I would call somebody to say, hey, is there any good new restaurants? We depended on others a lot. Now we have Yelp, we have Google, we have YouTube. Any answer to any question is essentially available on demand. So,
Yeah.
we're not depending on each other as much. We also live in a world of convenience. So we call it the catch of convenience. I don't have to talk to the barista anymore. I just order my coffee and I pick it up when I walk in. Anything I want is delivered, hours or a day later. So we're just not spending as much time rubbing shoulders with one another. And then the third is due to busyness. We're busier than ever. And the more busy we are, the less margin we have for connection. So those are three really big reasons why all of us are experiencing this. But for the emerging generations, they've just grown up in a world with all of this technology at their disposal. So it's changed the way that they interact.
Yeah, for sure. I've also read research that it creates more narcissism because when you're getting ice cream on the beach and then you get a million likes from your friends and family, it creates this false sense of people care what I'm doing. And really, I mean, it's nice, but normally we wouldn't be reporting back to people that we got ice cream at the beach, maybe.
So Catherine, we call that social snacking. So what happens with a lot of emerging professionals is they social snack. So they think by liking something online or by posting something online or messaging somebody online, it's like snacking, right? Like it's a bit nourishing in the moment, but it's not healthy for you.
Right.
And what's healthy are what we call pro-social interactions. So having a meaningful conversation, empathizing with somebody, getting advice, having an actual conversation that goes above and beyond like screen communication. And if we are social snacking more often than doing these pro-social behaviors, we're just going to naturally feel more lonely.
Yeah, that makes sense. You could probably get a little shot of endorphins when you see that people have liked some things, or when you see something going on that's happy for your friends, and a little shot of endorphin, but it's not providing you what you really need. So how do we spot this in ourselves? How would I recognize that I'm really feeling lonely? I'm surrounded by great people, but how would I know that I feel lonely?
Well, loneliness is not the absence of people, it's the absence of connection.
Okay.
So I could be in a very busy office space with lots of people around me and I can feel debilitatingly lonely, or I can work from home and have a remote working environment and feel absolutely connected to my team. So when it comes to diagnosing loneliness, we have to understand that the connection that we feel comes in different forms. So we have connection to ourselves, we have connection to our coworkers, we have connection to spirituality, we have connection to our work, our leader. There's all of these connection points. And if we're starting to feel like, hey, you know what? I'm just not as connected as I want to be, we have to do a bit of a deeper dive into why that is. And there's all these avenues that play into that. We created a free assessment where people can go and actually figure out how lonely they are. The assessment is at our site called lesslonely.com. And in the book, there's a whole bunch of context around the signs of loneliness. And if you're looking for loneliness in yourself or others, you want to pay attention to learning and development. Like, are you just naturally wanting to learn and grow and take on new challenges? If not, you might be lonely. Are you only talking about work? Because if so, that's a sign that you're not satisfied with your personal relationships. Are you overworking? Because overwork is a way to, get away from the reality of the fact that, hey, you're not feeling fully connected. So there's a whole bunch of things to look into, but you have to know where to look, and you have to understand that loneliness is a bit elusive. So we have to be paying closer attention to it.
Yeah. So you're saying we can take your free assessment at lesslonely.com, and also there's this kind of list of things to look for is in the book.
Yeah, cool. The book is written primarily for leaders who are essentially wanting to create, we call it a connectable culture, but they are wanting to have a team dynamic that is rooted in strong relationships with each other. However, we understand that, there's leaders at all levels. So the book has examples and stories and different types of scenarios that are applicable for anybody who's working on a team in an organization. But if a leader's watching this and they really are nervous that, I think maybe there is some loneliness going on within my team, the book is specifically, aligned to help them navigate some of those challenges.
Tell us about some of that. What are some of the tips that you offer leaders for, helping their teams be less lonely?
My favorite tip has nothing to do with loneliness. So loneliness is still a very sensitive topic. It's still a topic, unfortunately, that's rooted in a lot of shame. And I don't want to try to get any leaders to feel like they have to be therapists, or they have to be psychologists, or they have to go in and be mediators. No, right? Like, that's not what you have to do. What you do have to do is you have to be mindful of some of the strategies that pull people out of loneliness without talking to them about their feelings.
Yeah.
So
are you lonely? Do tell.
Catherine.
Yeah, that's not going to work. Yeah.
I think maybe you're lonely. How about we have a therapy session and talk all about these really sensitive feelings that you possess? No, that's not the case. The research shows that the fastest way to pull somebody from feeling disconnected back into a connected mindset is to make them feel very valued and very important. So the best way to do this is to essentially go to someone like you, Catherine. I'd say, if I'm suspecting maybe Catherine's a bit lonely, I would go to you and say, Catherine, I need help with this. And I need your skills and I need your abilities to make sure that we can do X, Y, and Z. When someone can draw a straight line from their worth, their significance, and their impact, that's the fastest way to get them to feel more connected. So that has nothing to do with having an uncomfortable conversation. It's just making sure that they know. We say it's identifying the beneficiaries of the labor. Do they understand how valuable and important they are? And if you can make that happen, that's the quickest way to get somebody to feel more connected.
I'm not to turn this into a therapy session, but I connect lots of dots all the time when I'm talking on my LinkedIn live show. My daughter was talking last night about how her group of friends at school, she's 8 in second grade, I'm going through a divorce. She feels like she's the only kid who out of her circle of friends who's there. And I'm realizing that last night when we were talking about what she was ultimately saying is, I feel lonely, I think, as we're talking, she's feeling like she doesn't have a support system with her friends because they don't ask her about it or understand what she's going through. And she needs her 8-year-old friends to talk to her about it. And so now I'm connecting the dots here. And I guess that probably the same for adults. So you could feel like I'm isolated over here on this project. I'm not getting the support I need. It would be the same thing.
Well, loneliness oftentimes, so there's two types of loneliness. You have what's called situational loneliness, and you have what's called chronic loneliness.
Okay.
Chronic loneliness is when every single day you feel very dissatisfied with the relationships and the connections in your life. Only 20% of people who feel lonely have chronic loneliness.
Okay.
80% have what's called situational loneliness, and that's what your daughter's dealing with. So we move to a new city. That's lonely. We take on a new job responsibility that we've never done before, and there's a lot of unknowns. We don't know what to do or who to turn to. That's lonely. Mm-hmm. We join a new team, right? Like all of these new things where you don't have the clear answers in front of you. A lack of clarity is lonesome. So yes, you are connecting very accurate dots as you're thinking about what might be going on with that dynamic.
Yeah. Well, we'll have to talk offline about how I help her be less lonely. I'll read your book. I guess in this case, I'm the leader because I'm the mom, right?
You said the book's in the P.O. box.
It's in my P.O. box. My assistant said it came yesterday. She saw the thing that it came yesterday. So I got lots of stuff in my P.O. box. I don't have time. I'm definitely not lonely. I got lots of people to hang out with and places to go. And though I know that's not necessarily what loneliness is. So I was looking at your website, obviously, and I saw these cool little cards that you have. Tell me about that activity that you've created that goes along with your book.
Yeah, so and in the book, we did this too. So in the book, there's all these illustrations that we've created that are a bit humorous. And while loneliness isn't a funny or humorous topic, it is such a serious, sensitive topic that we wanted to make it a lot more accessible. Because at the end of the day, loneliness is an emotion that all of us have, right? Mm-hmm. Just like hunger is an emotion that tells us go eat an apple, like you need nourishing fuel for your body. Loneliness is essentially just a sign that we need to forge a connection. It's just a reminder like, hey, you need to fill the tank of, an emotional relationship with somebody else. So when we wrote the book and when we've been talking about this, we created these visuals, and the cards you're referencing are called the Connect deck. And the Connect deck is our attempt to create a game that is fun and lighthearted, but has some scientifically proven and research-based exercises that get people to reconnect with their team or humanity. So every day you look at the card and it gives you one pro-social behavior, one thing you can do that's going to help you feel more connected. Like my favorite is called scroll down memory lane. And that exercise is you go into your phone, you go back 6 months, and you find a picture of a memory of you and other people, and you send that to the person or persons and just say, hey, I loved when we did this, this, and this, thinking about you. Just that one simple exercise gives everybody who's involved that reminder of we're here for each other. We care about each other, right? We have a tribe in place. And there's a whole bunch of those kinds of simple activities that we've laid out in that exercise. That's pretty cool.
That's awesome. I love it. That's we all love our business deck of cards for different things. I love this little empire you've created around loneliness. And I do just want to go back to something you said, because I think it's important that loneliness is a feeling that drives, it's a survival mechanism. It's your brain telling you you've got to make a little change or a shift. It's not something to be ashamed of, but it is because we're so social. We're social creatures that if there appears that there's a lack of socialness, then there's a shame that comes with that we got to get past. And I think one silver lining of COVID is that a lot of these types of more taboo topics will become something that we could talk about more easily.
I'm going to take it one step further, because as we've been doing a lot of the work that we're doing, especially within companies, and we're trying to get people to understand this isn't a soft topic, it's a dire one. Because when people feel lonely, the same part of the brain that lights up when you register physical pain is the part of the brain that lights up when you feel excluded or lonely, which is really important to understand.
Wow.
Because your brain, when you're feeling lonely or isolated, is essentially sending a fight or flight signal like, hey, this is a big problem. You need to figure this out because you're in a high threat situation.
Mm-hmm.
That's what's happening. Because many, 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 many years ago, as we were battling saber-toothed tigers and taking down woolly mammoths, we're not stronger, we're not faster, all right? We can't outswim a shark, we can't beat up a bear. We're not overpowering as a physical species, but we knew our survival was multiplied through collaboration and through being a part of a tribe. And if we got excluded from that tribe, we weren't going to make it very long. So that's why our brains register that same sensation of physical pain when we feel excluded, because that's our way of saying, like, you're in trouble. So it's a big deal if people are feeling lonely at work. We say you're distracted at best and you're debilitated at worst. So we've got to do something about it.
I want to add to that. So I used to teach public speaking in college, and we would, we spent a whole lot of time talking about the fear of public speaking, because while you and I love it, lots of people really don't like it, right?
No.
And so I would talk to my students about, let's just unpack what you're afraid of exactly when we're talking about public speaking. And I would always boil it down to what you're talking about, that your brain is telling you subconsciously that if you come up here and you make a horrible mistake, or your fly's open, or you trip, or you can't remember something, or you don't do it perfectly, that your brain is thinking, then we're going to be outcast and we'll be sent off to live in the forest by ourselves. And so then, like, let's reel that back, because we know that's not actually going to happen. And so it was about working through that instinctual fear. And that's why people are afraid of public speaking. They're afraid of being outcast and being lonely. It's not actually the speech itself, it's the outcome or the potential outcome that our instinct has worked up. So I guess what I'm saying is sometimes maybe we have to be aware of our fears related to things like loneliness. If I don't do this, or what am I afraid of exactly? And if it is something like that, I'll be outcast, that's probably not actually what's going to happen in a lot of cases. But
no, but that's our biology screaming at us to be careful. And you're right. It's when you break it down like that, public speaking isn't that scary. When people are still gonna love you and care for you and have a relationship with you, but we put such a focus on what if I look silly and I'm not liked, I'm not appreciated, I'm not valued, and that's our biological cue. Survival. So you got to get
past that. Your body's like, this is a great way to get outcast, so let's not stand up in front of her. And I'll say too, of course, as a workplace bullying expert, that being bullied is a very lonely place, and that is one of the big damages that people who feel bullied end up in. They feel lonely at work and isolated, and then they go home and they feel lonely and isolated because their family doesn't really understand what they're going through. And often there's a ton of research that being bullied at work is correlated with lots of divorce, because you kind of become obsessed with what's happening to you at work, and the people around you just can't take it anymore, So there's a lot of things going on at work that can cause loneliness. So if leaders are listening and they're interested in making sure people don't feel lonely, there's a lot of other pieces that go with it. You also have to make sure there isn't things like harassment and bullying if you're interested in creating a work environment where people don't feel lonely.
They go hand in hand. And what's really interesting is the research proves that the team is only as connected as its loneliest member. So if you have somebody on your team who really is feeling disconnected, that is going to impact the dynamic between everyone. And it only takes one person on a team who feels that way to essentially derail all of the opportunity that team has at its disposal. And those derailers happen quite quickly. As you know from your coaching and consulting, and I do a lot of teamwork workshops and a lot of coaching and consulting, it's really critical that we pay attention to this stuff.
Yeah. And I don't want to use the word weakest link, but because being lonely is not a weak thing, and recognizing you're lonely is very courageous and important. But that, I think we all know that saying, the team's only as strong as the weakest link, which is we got to find a new word for weak. It's not the
Yeah.
team is only as strong as its loneliest member.
And loneliness is a bit contagious because if I'm feeling lonely, what's really strange about the way we interact with our own loneliness is you would think, like, if I'm hungry, I just go get something to eat. It's a no-brainer. When I'm lonely, you'd think I would just be more apt to go seek connection, but
Yeah,
it's the
I bet
opposite.
you go the
We,
other
we
way.
become we become way more removed and we internalize it and we start to play off. It's like a snake that eats itself. We're like, well, we're not wanted, we're not desired, so why try? I got to protect myself even more.
Mhm.
And that sensation of continuing to move backward is felt by everyone. And if
Yeah.
I'm being more reserved, less approachable, I'm not communicating, then that sends a cultural tone to other people that maybe that's what we should be doing. And it does impact everybody. So it isn't a weak link. It is oftentimes a disconnected, disengaged, lonely link that when you know what to do, you can fix quite easily. So I'm glad we're in collaboration and there's a lot of themes that coincide with what we're each doing. And hopefully
Yeah.
together we'll create
We'll create a
workplaces.
less lonely work. Yes.
Exactly.
Well, thank you so much. I am so glad that we've become friends through, and that's what's fun about technology. As much as it hinders, we became friends through technology, and here we are on the same page and collaborating. And I'm so looking forward to reading your book. And I know you mentioned Civility Partners is in there, so put that little
There's
plug.
a great example. There's a great example of a really amazing practice that Catherine and her team does. So for anything else, go read the book so you can learn about
For
Catherine's
no other
consulting.
reason, get the book for my example. And just a reminder, you can get to the book and the assessment and the cards that we were talking about at lesslonely.com. And of course, Steve's available for keynotes and trainings and workshops and consulting around that. So thank you again. I enjoy chatting with you, and I will see you soon, hopefully.